2019 at 5:30 p.m. We're now in order. Let me call the roll. Councilmember Malcolm Wright, Chair.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Linda Mood.
Here.
Councilmember Wheat.
Here.
Mayor is here. Councilmember Dodson.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
And Councilmember Rigney is on her way. So once she gets here, we'll note in the minutes that she's here. We have an hour and we have 5 items on the agenda, so we're gonna jump right into this. First one, the tree mitigation plan along Colleyville.
Mayor, thank you. Mayor, council members, good evening. Raiso Reyes, Director of Public Works. Beginning in March of 2019, I was approached by the Fort Worth Transit Authority they were informing us that they were going to install some fences along the Colleyville Trail to separate the trail users from the actual tracks. And they wanted to install a black chain link fence, a black coated chain link fence from the north side of Colleyville city limits near McCain, all the way down to the south side. So we talked to them a little bit about it, and before I get into that, let me kind of jump into some history on that. So back in spring of 2017, we entered into a tree mitigation agreement with Fort Worth Transit Authority for $271,000. In December 2017, staff was directed to examine the options of providing a sound barrier. And then in February 2019, Lisa did a presentation for some of the tree mitigations that we're going to do. The North John McCain and Golf Course bidding project went out to bid, and it opened up last week, so I do have some updates on that one that I will give through my presentation. And here's where we're at today. I'll come back to this slide here. But they're going to install a chain link fence along the entire corridor of the city limits of Colleyville. It's going to be a black coated chain link fence. We thought in some areas where there is no natural barriers such as trees or brushes, we thought it'd be nicer to have more of a decorative fence such as a wrought iron fence to kind of increase the aesthetic appeal in that area. The areas that would likely have the fence installed is these areas right here, which is mainly at the Bransford intersection, Pleasant Run, and John McCain are your more visible areas where you're going to be able to see the black coated chain link fence. And the transit authority wants to get that installed in the 3rd quarter of 2019. The installation of the fence will last 6 to 9 months. So we asked them to take a look at these areas and give us a cost estimate for what would it cost to get the wrought iron fence. And that's where it came out to $108,950 to do those certain areas. And I'll drill in more to those areas. Here's the first area of the decorative fence that we would install. The green would represent where we would install that fence, and this is more of the intersection of Bradford and LD Lockett. So this area right here and that area right there would be an area exposed to the LD Lockett corridor. So we thought that would be a good candidate to install the wrought iron fence.
Question.
Sir?
Is this for them to install, isn't it? Or would we install it?
Well, the cost to go up and above would be $108,000, and that would be something that we would take on ourselves.
I understand that,
to upgrade
but who does it?
They would install it for us.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay,
So they would install a chain link fence, but we thought, hey, we should upgrade in those visible areas.
Understand that.
So this is one of those areas. We already have somewhat of a decorative fence installed. It's the same intersection. Here's the Ransford and LD Lockett intersection. You can see there's already a component of that fence there today, presently. And so we thought it'd be a nice area to continue with the decorative fence all the way up through the visible areas.
Was that one about 30 inches tall, Ray? Because it doesn't look like it's
Yes,
normal height.
it's not as tall as the other one.
And they're okay with that?
That they will leave in place.
Right.
And then they would just tie in the chain link fence is what they were going to originally do, but
Right.
maybe we just tie in the wrought iron fence and maybe just taper it up to a 4-foot tall one.
Is that what they want, 4 foot? I mean,
Yes,
is that?
that's what they would do with as far as the minimum goes.
Okay.
Here's on the other side of, now we're heading north, basically from Bransford, but here's the elevated storage tank. We will continue the wrought iron decorative fence there to match the other side as well. And then we found a couple spots as you're heading towards Pleasant Run, some other areas that were visible to LD Lockett.
So the purple is 4-foot chain link?
That's a 4-foot chain link fence that they would install.
Okay.
And they're going to do this along because they want it all along the corridor to provide
Yeah.
protection from the tracks.
Okay.
And I know over here kind of overlaps, so that's just a design flaw. We'll fix that out to just have one single fence as opposed to 2.
Not gonna have 2
Yes.
fences though.
So Ray, in the gaps, are you then relying upon vegetation, or are you going to have trees?
So yes, you will still have the chain link fence installed here, but you have so much vegetation you won't see it. So this is just purely visible from the LD Lockett side. So So that's another good area that we go all the way to near the soccer fields over here on that side of Pleasant Run.
Is that little one significant enough? What is it, 20 feet or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we just, I guess it was a filler. I mean, it may be something we take out or not. We just added in there for the
Okay.
cost right
It's
now.
pretty visible though when you drive across.
Is it?
Yeah, on Pleasant Run there, when you drive either way, that whole area is pretty visible, so I think it would be attractive.
Did somebody obviously walk or drive this area?
Yes,
Just-
Mark Wood, Assistant City Manager Mark Wood and I did drive this
Okay,
corridor
to
from.
figure out which
Yeah,
pieces.
to see which pieces would make
Okay.
sense to upgrade from the chain link fence to more decorative fence.
That's not right. That's supposed to be Pleasant Run?
On the right.
It's the
Yes.
up and down one.
Yes, that's Pleasant Run.
Yeah, it's a curve.
No,
Yes, sir.
something not right about that picture.
It's upside down, it's upside down,
Well,
isn't it?
I'm confused on,
No,
It's
it's
upside down.
there's fencing on both.
Yeah, because here's
No,
your,
it's
here's your
north.
Bradford
Yeah,
storage
it's
tank,
south.
your elevated
Yeah.
storage tank,
That's right.
and then Pleasant Run just kind of curves right around here.
Soccer fields are right on your right.
Yes.
On your right.
So that is an area.
Okay.
Okay, and then the other area would be, this side already has the decorative fence, just like similar to the one on Bradford on the south side. And we would add it here, of course, this would not be there. That portion, we would tie it into it. So
Okay.
that was just a little glitch on preparing these slides.
Go back. Go back
Back.
again. Right, see that purple line on this side? So they're not gonna take vegetation out and put that in, are they?
No,
Right at
no.
the line of that tree.
Can we go back one more slide?
Yes.
So that fence that's already existing there, if we're gonna go from a 30-inch to a 4-foot fence, wouldn't it be more cohesive to
Make it
be
the same.
4 foot all the way across? Or is that just so that, I mean, are they gonna make it jump? Are they gonna try to
Well,
make it
we would-
rise or?
They'll slope it up.
We would slope it up, we would taper it in there and adjust it as needed to match, because to make it look cohesive, like you're saying.
Okay.
So seamless.
I have a question about the intersection of John McCain, where the trail starts, right there. There's a lot of open space behind those buildings.
Yeah, but
So
you
we're gonna
can't-
go from the decorative to the chain link, are we gonna have any kind of
Can't-
vegetation, so
You
it's
can't really see them.
The idea was, as the
Not from the
Travis
street,
public,
you can't.
as you
Only
yeah,
go
not
along.
on the street, but yeah.
From the
Oh.
street view. So that's where we were, that was the idea we were taking. Of course, we can do as much more as we need to, but this was a starting point that we went with, was from the corridor itself.
Or at least put a tree or something so the transition isn't,
I think that's a nice idea. Put a piece of landscaping right at transition just to
right, I just feel like it would
symbol.
look,
And that's
Support
something we can
trees.
take note, because we still have the tree mitigation project that we're gonna add some additional trees.
okay.
So we can definitely put that down as a note to make that transition better from the decorative fence to the chain link fence.
Okay.
That's what we.
There are some trees on the west side of the trail. I don't know, but it looks like there's a couple of small ones on the east side maybe. Where the trail
Pretty-
curves to go
Yeah.
up to John McCain.
Right, so we can look at that as we
Yeah.
get this tree mitigation.
Sure.
So, one of the, when Mark and I were traveling, we were thinking about where we're gonna get this funding mechanism for this fence to do the upgrade. I know that Lisa was working on a tree mitigation project and along the Cotton Belt Trail, so we thought maybe that's a good place to start to see if the cost of upgrading from the chain link fence can fall under this project. Here are some of the trees, projects that Lisa identified back in February. So, that tree that, the original cost that she has, estimated cost, these came out to $170,000. The wrought iron fence would be $108,000. The fence impact would be a negative $8,000. It would be to still do all the projects that she had lined out and include the fence.
Does that include the John McCain course, golf
Yes,
course?
yes. I didn't have the bids at the time, so I did add that later, but that does include that.
Oh, it does.
So the bids that we opened up came in, and we had it originally, I'm sorry, it's right here, $73,000.
It's in the 73.
The trees.
We had these as two separate projects,
Oh.
but we combined them as one
Oh,
when we bid it out, so
okay,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
It
that's what it
looked
was.
like you were waiting for an,
Yes.
73
Originally,
plus.
Originally, they were separated as two projects, but when we bid it out or advertised it, we combined them
Good.
into one.
Sure.
It came out at 73. And
Okay.
instead of dividing it evenly, I just figured we just do it as one.
Cool.
So that would be, the impact would be an $8,000 increase to the overall project that was funded there. Now, so what staff is seeking here is, should we upgrade from the chain link fence to the decorative fence? And if so, do you want to use this funding mechanism, or should we look at somewhere else to pull for that?
One quick question, is the Bransford low fence, is that wrought iron?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it is, okay.
It's-
You couldn't tell from the picture.
Yeah, it was very.
Just a
hard to-
comment, one thought is that you might want to consider, I think the fence is a good expenditure no matter what. So the aesthetics that it provides are worthwhile.
Yeah.
But I think you might want to consider spending some portion of the tree money on the fence and reserve some portion of the tree money or the remaining tree money for trees elsewhere in parks, and maybe pay for the fence out of the capital fund. The reason is because the mitigation, I think the logic in using it for the fence is that the mitigation corridor is the same.
Right.
But I think that the mitigation purpose is a little different. The mitigation was about tree replacement, and so there are a lot of places in our parks that may not be directly along the Cotton Belt that may benefit from trees as well. And so it might be a better nexus to save some of this money and use it elsewhere in the community for tree placement as well. So if you go with the fence funding from this source exclusively, then this fund is depleted.
Where would we get it otherwise, capital project?
Yes.
I think it makes sense to do that. I mean, we have the tree board is really part of the park board with some extra members that they report into the park board. If we went ahead and used the money from the mitigation fund for trees, we could assign them the duty, which is their duty, to take a look at how most effectively to use that money in the city and let them come back with a recommendation to us on how to use it.
So maybe use half and half?
Absolutely.
But I agree. I think we should do the fence.
So we're all in agreement with
Upgrade.
upgrading those
Sure.
areas, the visible areas.
My opinion.
I
Then we-
totally agree.
How do they determine the cost? Are they the contractors for that? Are they?
No, it's still an engineer's estimate, so it
Okay.
could come out lower, just like,
Yeah, they're bids.
yeah, just like this one here, I believe John McCain North was estimated at 100,000, and it came in at 73, so there's still
That's great.
potential that we can come in under that,
Okay.
but they're,
And another thing to consider is if we plant more trees along that, which I'm okay with, but at the same time, there's gotta be maintenance on that trail, you know, the trees, the limbs and everything fall, and so
yeah.
it's kinda something to think about there too.
And
That was one of the
and that's one thing I
challenges.
need to touch base on is, they are gonna, the Fort Worth Transit Authority is gonna install the fence all the way through, but they are wanting us to maintain it after they install it.
Okay.
Which we do along that way anyway. There's a lot of trees along.
And to your
No,
point,
you're saying maintain the
Fence.
fence?
maintain the
Yeah,
fence,
the main
yeah.
fence along the entire Cotton Belt Trail, and they would install the fence at no
So
expense
if
to
the
us,
fence
other
is
than the
damaged
part
or
we're
if it needs to be
upgrading.
painted, we have to maintain it. And
Is
to
that
your-
true for all of the other surrounding areas, communities as well?
I don't know, I mean,
It's their right of way, right?
it's on the edge of the right of way. My opinion is, no railroad is ever gonna maintain a fence as well as we are. So when that fence falls into disarray, we're gonna want the ability to maintain it and fix it and paint it and replace parts. But that is traditionally not what railroads do. Traditionally, they would maintain it as part of their
That's what I thought.
control of their right of way. But to answer your question about the trees, one of the reasons why we were limited in where we put trees along the trail is because we wanted natural areas for, spacing, but we also needed areas that we could get irrigation to. And so that was a challenge as well. And so Lisa and Ray spent a lot of time identifying areas that were really well-suited and those that unfortunately were not because of that. And so that's a great question for longer-term discussion is, where's opportunities as part of our utility plan to, when we're looking at providing upgrades to water service or water mains, making sure we provide the service stubs for future irrigation in that area. LD Lockett's a great example where we'll be doing some of that in the next couple of years. So, I mean, those are good examples, but some of it was just cost prohibitive because we couldn't get the utilities to it.
Sure.
So, and if we are gonna go 50% from tree mitigation fund, 50% capital, maybe we can look at putting some more additional areas that you talked about.
Okay.
So,
So What's the
That's
number?
what I heard, is that?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
I don't think the number was good.
I didn't give a percentage.
Well, I heard that.
I said zero.
Yeah, okay.
That was my thought, but, I mean, we can discuss it. I mean, you'd have to get the other money from somewhere else.
Right.
Well, we'll have to bring it in front of, we'll have to vote on it, right? to do
No
that.
matter what, that expenditure would come before council, yes.
Yeah, right.
And at that time, we'd have an alternate fund source identified,
Okay.
but it'd be capital.
Agree.
I have a quick
But
question.
the concept I talked about was this would provide a pool of money to our park board and tree board that they could make recommendations for where to use it and put trees either in parks or appropriate places in town. You know, some of our parks do need some shade, and so we could ask them to take a look at that and recommend to us.
It looks
So
like
do
it
we
could
want to
bring-
get that before we make any decisions on where, to see what,
No, because if we, all I'm saying is keep the tree mitigation money for trees. Do the fence, they need to come up with another source of money for that. Now, are you worried about that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not 180.
Okay, got it.
Is the 108,000, is that the difference, or is that the total cost of the?
That's the total cost to upgrade.
Yeah.
Of the.
Just the difference.
Yes,
Of the wrought iron section, that's all.
But you're getting credit for the chain link.
Yes, you are getting credit for the chain link, yes. So it's just a difference of going whatever the $20 difference between the two
So
materials.
I saw that it was measured, is that by feet earlier in the packet?
So, yeah, so what they
That
did on the
seems like a
cost
lot of
estimate,
money.
so in the cost estimate I put in, they included the entire linear feet, and then they did the same for the other options, and then subtracted that money back, which was the difference of
Right.
upgrading. So,
Let me ask another question. Is it unreasonable or not to say, well, if we're paying for the upgrade on the wrought iron part, that we maintain that and they maintain the chain link?
I'm with the city man, I agree with what you're saying, but also I think with the city manager, they're not gonna really maintain that fence like we're gonna want them to.
Yeah.
And if something breaks down or is tore up or needs repainting, you know they're gonna drag their feet to do it. And they're gonna see if they got the money in the budget to do it at that year or that time, so that's the only thing I was thinking, that it would be great for us to take
Yeah,
over that.
I agree. We would do better than they would, it's for sure. I think what's probably gonna happen is stuff's gonna grow in the fence. You know, it's gonna be trimming the vegetation probably is most of the maintenance.
don't you want it to grow and cover that fence up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd rather
I'm just saying.
cover
that's
the chain
pretty
link.
good. Yeah.
The biggest problem is when the fence falls in disarray,
Sure.
you know, and something's damaged.
What kind of warranty period? I mean, what if they install it and it falls over and we're responsible immediately?
You're really not, I mean, most fences that go up are pretty straightforward. Either they're gonna have a problem right away or they won't. But you're not gonna get anything more than a standard warranty on that. So if there's something wrong with the fence material, you know, the coating on the metal breaks down or something, you're gonna have a problem with that fairly quickly in the next 5 years. But to the point we're making, you won't see any of that because most of it's gonna be hidden by the vegetation. The areas that are exposed are where we're doing the wrought iron. But if you are made aware of a fence section that is either missing or broken or it's fallen down, we want to get out there and repair it right away because it's a safety concern for us. The railroad won't respond that way.
Right.
That's just not their thing.
Is this the plastic coated chain link?
We know that.
Right.
As you might have noticed.
It's that's not the plastic, but the metal coated chain link fence?
Metal painted.
Yes.
It's black,
It's
painted.
Yeah, black coated, yeah. So,
like paint dip.
All right, any other questions? Everybody good with
Yeah,
what we
I think
talked
so.
about? Thank you, Ray. Next one is the McCain Westfield intersection.
You got that one too?
Yep.
I thought I would take over this
You're
one.
fine there.
Do you want me to do it?
No, sure. The transitioning over.
There you go.
So, all right, so I wanted to, we're gonna discuss a little bit later on McDonald and Westport. So, as far as where we have in property acquisition, which lends me to bring you an update as to what we're gonna do with the next roundabout, which is gonna be at Westport Drive and John McCain, or potential roundabout. So, part of our thoroughfare plan, you know, we have McDonald going in right now, and then the McCain and Westcote was a special consideration, the intersection. We were talking about possibly, let me just show you real quick here, as we all are familiar with that area. Here's Westcote Drive right here on this one, John McCain. So, and then here back looking towards the east, so this is John McCain and Westcote intersects that T right there.
I drive that intersection every day, and
Yes.
those pictures do not make me think of that intersection at all. You know how pictures can
No.
play a trick
Of
on
course.
you? You know, I mean, it's just, that's all.
It's probably kinda like a
It's
little
just the
figure, yeah.
angles and stuff. No,
How'd you get it to where there was only one car in there, too?
It's just a trick, yeah.
What was this, midnight?
That's
If you go anytime
They
during
photoshopped them.
wait for those peak hours, it's pretty low. In the summer shot too.
Can I ask a question? What is that piece of cement that's out in the middle of the road?
So it's the raised median, is this part right here?
Somebody did
No.
a great design.
I drive
with that
over it
one.
all the time. I mean, I don't.
Everybody
I
drives over it.
Yeah.
Why is it there?
Not
No, it's
me.
not a good idea.
Why is it there?
Somebody else's
That's-
Suburban,
Well,
yeah.
we talked about taking it out, but maybe with this project, we'll just do it all together.
But that's another, well, I guess it's another year.
Yeah.
It'll be another year.
Well, so everybody just
That
kind
makes
of
chops
show
up.
you the intersection here.
So they drive over, it's not tall
Oh,
enough,
yeah.
is that a problem?
It's
They
in a
drive over
the whole
cars.
intersection is a weird
It's just
angle,
like-
so you just
Yeah.
clip it all the time.
I think on my first week here, I hit it because it's coming right
Yes.
here as you turn this left.
It's just a
Were you
really
in the
hard
company
angle.
truck, or were
Yeah.
you in your own car?
Wasn't all. Good question, good question. So no, I know how hard it is. It's a very tight turn once you get into John McCain heading west. So here's another angle of it. So, there was talks about once we get McDonald in place, what are we gonna do with this Westcote John McCain intersection? And there was talks about doing a right turn lane. And, we just started discussing that with the consultant engineer. And we were trying to make sure that if we did go with the right turn lane, how can we incorporate that back into the roundabout? 'Cause more or less, we wanted to kind of transition back into that at a later point, but we wanted an interim step as we got this one built, something to help the traffic flow since we're already helping that one. So the right turn lane, based on the consultant, said to do the construction cost would be almost $100,000 basically. And so we were trying to look at the footprint there and see how we can get that right turn lane in there and try to utilize it. There's really no way of doing it. So we would spend $100,000 and then maybe come back a couple years later, tear it back out and do a mini roundabout or a roundabout.
That doesn't
Just
make
do a
sense.
roundabout.
So I looked at, hey, why don't we do the roundabout here? So we had to look, first of all, we laid the roundabout here, and it appears that we will not even need any right-of-way with what we got there right now.
Cool.
So that's one advantage of it too. The second one is that roundabout cost is about $400,000, and we're already gonna spend $100,000 at least for the right turn lane. And this would help mitigate the traffic congestion that is already there right now as far as the westbound coming on the evening peak hours and eastbound on McCain for the morning peak hours. And the cost of it is $400,000. I was a little shocked that it was that much, but today I was at a COG meeting, and the city of Burleson just did a similar one. They called it a mini roundabout, and they did it about 3 years ago, and it was around $350,000. So that cost is right there and lines up with what we're looking at in today's prices. So this, I believe, and I'm bringing it here to council, that we should move forward with the roundabout, and spend that money and get it all tied in together. One.
Yep, I've got a question, Ray.
I have to do something.
A couple of times that I've been in roundabouts, I've seen semis cut across. You know, they can't make the turn. So is this turn gonna be as big as the other one on John McCain, or the?
It's gonna be a little bit smaller. It does have the mountable curb, just like the other ones do.
Okay.
Which they're designed that way, is to utilize that little raised median
Okay.
onto the roundabout to help them navigate through that.
Because otherwise
It's like
they
the one
they
at
would never
Jackson,
make
isn't
it.
it?
It's just-
Yeah, it's
similar
just
to
like the
that,
one at
yes.
Jackson at Pool.
I know,
Yes.
that's the one I've seen do it more.
It's
So
smaller.
it will still have the same concept where you will be able to navigate through.
So the center is actually much smaller than,
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit smaller than that, because the actual place, we're still trying to drill into that more to see if we can do any similar to our other roundabouts where they have the little landscape in the center.
do something,
I just
yeah.
don't know how big that would be, but that'd be your mountable area where you can utilize it.
Okay.
So, this project will be funded by impact fees, so we have that money ready to go since we're adding a little bit of capacity. And we do have the consultant.
Since we're what, Ray? I missed.
We're
what
adding
you-
a little bit of
Oh,
capacity.
gotcha, okay.
So, it fits in line with our impact fee, so we do have the money available to do this, right away.
Great.
We do have a design proposal that the consultants are working, should we decide to move forward.
Well, in theory, we say yes, go for it, everything is smooth sailing from here on forward. What's the approximate timeframe we're
It's
looking
got
at?
that.
Oh, wow,
Here's-
look
So-
at that.
amazing, it's hard to say.
Exactly. Here's a guess.
Who knows?
July
So let me
20.
jump back into McDonald, which I guess we will talk about later. We're looking, we may kind of maybe advertise that project towards the end of this year, maybe a little bit sooner than we anticipated. think we're trying to do it next, spring of 2020. So that may change a little bit, but here for this one, we would get this award the design contract in June, get all this stuff going, we can have construction going by May 2020. And if everything goes well with the other one, we can have these projects finished simultaneously at the same time.
Awesome.
Because this would take less time to build, and the other one is about 9 to 12 months construction duration.
Right.
So we can, if we time it well, we can have them end at the same time.
It's a lot of work on one road,
It is a lot of work.
especially on two
And
ends,
so-
flow through traffic, that,
What?
the people that live up in that area. I mean, how would they get across? I mean, are you gonna build something temporary and
So
stuff?
the one at McDonald, we said they had to keep it open, all 4 sides, so they're gonna build it. It's why it's taking a little bit longer to build that one, so they can do it a quarter at a time. And the same concept would go here, we would have to keep that open, but you would still have a little bit of inconvenience. You still got construction going on.
Well, have we looked at, I mean, is this the best possible solution that we can put for that area? Because we've got to do something for that area.
This is because Monticello is the one.
It's the only solution that can fix Monticello's problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I know a lot of people have stated
Yes.
how horrible it
Good
is.
Lord Almighty.
Yeah, and that's the other thing with the right turn lane. You were only gonna help the upcoming traffic from the West Coast heading northbound, while this, the roundabout helps everybody in that intersection that approaches it.
Okay.
Hey,
I
Ray,
didn't, go ahead, Jerry.
just a note, the discussion that we had when we did the roundabout traffic study for McDonwell and Westcote provided a recommendation that had 2 options. Option 1 was a short-term recommendation, option 2 was the roundabout, the long-term. We did the long-term in the shorter time frame. But in that recommendation was this concept of a 3-way stop sign that we've heard a lot of residents bring up. But the 3-way stop sign condition presented by the traffic study only worked with a right turn lane coming down Westcote to turn right onto McDonwell. And so the cost and the right-of-way related to that right turn lane necessitated a lot of the same things that the ultimate roundabout required at McDonwell and Westcote anyway. And so we did the longer-term solution in the shorter time frame. And so this right turn lane, as it relates to John McCain in Westcote, was a separate issue that was a secondary discussion for that intersection. So I didn't want the 2 thoughts, because that intersection also was suggested should be a 3-way stop sign. There was never a traffic study done for that intersection to look at that. It was only at McDonwell School Road in Westcote. And so this intersection, the roundabout is the ultimate best solution for that intersection, clearly. And Monticello residents were the first to complain, rightfully so, about the right turn lane off of Westcote onto John McCain, because that right turn lane did nothing to help them
Right.
get out during rush hour.
Right.
And we acknowledge that. So
Absolutely.
this
It would make it
does,
harder.
This would help everybody around.
right, it didn't help them at all, it just left them in the same spot they are now. This benefits them because now they have the opportunity to enter the roundabout with the other traffic, so.
Then, do we wanna talk about the resurfacing?
Sure.
One thing I want to bring up to council before I wrap up my presentation is, as we're getting prepared to do McDonald roundabout, the county is also slated to do resurfacing of McDonald as well for the summer. My thoughts were, the amount of construction that we're going to get going, now it's going to move a little bit sooner. Hopefully, we'll get this project going by early next year. You just resurface this road, and you're going to have heavy machinery coming down that road to get to the construction sites, for both construction sites, hopefully. So I was wondering if we should just hold off on resurfacing McDonald and do it as a part of the projects, either the McDonald roundabout or maybe with the John McCain Westcote, so that we can get a brand new, not a brand new road, but resurface that road so it can sustain a little bit longer.
It's pretty bad,
It is getting pretty bad, and we can do some base repairs, but again, I just wanted
That's
to.
the counterpoint. The counterpoint is that that road is deteriorating fast, and this would now push it back another year or longer. And the amount of heavy equipment that's coming in for this construction does not involve a huge amount of land balancing or trucks in and out. It really is more delivery and then, of course, concrete. And so, there are different opinions on this, which is fair, but I'm of the opinion that since you weren't reconstructing it anyway, you're not talking about widening it, you're just basically going to, redo the road. It's probably best to go ahead and do it, and then just be careful on the restrictions related to the vehicles that are coming there as part of the construction.
You could actually have a truck route. Are you gonna bid both of those together, or are you gonna bid those
No,
separately?
they would have to go
Okay,
separately,
So, have we considered maybe looking at a package deal? Just curious.
If we can get them to meet the timeline, that would be ideal.
Okay,
Get
because
better
we can
pricing.
save quite a bit of money
Sure.
on that.
Absolutely.
And still resurface the road again if we need to, if they do tear up after the county. But the other thing is also have a truck route that would come off a precinct line, to where they're not coming through the middle of town to come
Good
down.
point.
Yeah, so,
Yes, and that would be the,
That's an excellent
we can do
point.
that at the same time.
and
It's
that'd be
coming
the-
all the way across town. which
Right,
is
that'd be
crazy.
the route that I would have taken. That's why I was cautious to maybe we should wait to do McDonald, because of that route would be precinct line. would be-
Only bad thing is that it's gonna be another year.
Right, and that is
So,
true, so that's a valid point.
You know, I think we should, as city manager is saying, I think we should go ahead and resurface it, let them finish it, let them do what they're gonna do. And then if there is some hiccups along the way from construction, maybe we can go back in there and then resurface mill overlay a couple inches or an inch, if we even need to do that.
Yeah.
I'd even like to see that, these roads that we're milling and overlaying actually go out about a foot further than what the road actually sits, because if you look at some of them, they're capped just short of the old cap that's out there now sometimes. I think they need to go over the top of the cap and roll and fall out another 6 to 12 inches outside those caps. So-
You need a base on the outside. but
Protect
yeah,
it.
you can do
But
that.
most of them are pretty hard on the outside as you see that rock outside, so, but I agree.
Well, in the case of
Something we can
McDonald,
investigate.
you're probably taking it down to dirt in most of the spots anyway, right?
Right.
Is
So
that
this-
road, I mean, is
Is it
that road
gonna-
gonna have to be rebuilt at some point because the traffic is
Well,
so
that's, we're
heavy,
gonna,
or-
we're talking about a similar what you
Forest
saw in Cheeks
eventually.
Barger, where it literally goes down to dirt.
Got it.
And so you're not
Longer term.
reconstructing it and widening it with new curb and or ribbon curb.
Right.
That's a different option. And if you wanted to do that, that's something that would be a different design.
Total
And then you get
redevelopment.
into whether or not you want to do curb, ribbon curb, or even sidewalks and
Needs to be
trails.
done.
We're lucky there that we've already got great trails and sidewalks, so I mean, I don't think we'd have to do it for that reason, which is nice, but.
So are they gonna pull it all the way down to dirt, or are they gonna cap it?
Yes. They would pull it down all the way to dirt and redo it. And that's why I wanted to bring to you, see if we should hold off on that, maybe do a quick mill and overlay and then redo that later, but either way, it's,
How long will it take them to do that, right?
It's not
The state.
very-
the one we have scheduled right now, it's only gonna take a couple weeks with the county. The one
Pretty
that's
quick.
slated.
But if
Yeah,
you
but still,
cap
you gotta
it,
do
you're
it and
actually
then do it
keeping that
again.
base, that hard base already underneath it, you're only raising it a couple inches.
Yeah.
So your flow line's so high already on that road.
Yeah.
My opinion is to cap what we have, not take it down to the dirt. That's just my opinion. I think you keep that sub base already as it
What do
is,
you get out of that? 5 years, 7 years, maybe?
better.
Maybe, but
But you're going from 2 to 4.
So what's the difference, why do
4
you,
inches.
why do they take it down to dirt? What's
Because the
difference?
base is what really needs help out there, is what the guys have been doing when I came on back in last summer. They were trying to restore the base so that the county can just come and do some of the,
Okay.
but we couldn't get to it in time.
But you're saying they're gonna pull the road completely out, down to the dirt.
Right.
Are they gonna put any type of base down on that,
Yes.
on the dirt?
Yes.
What
They're
will
gonna
they
put,
do?
what do we
They're gonna
do?
lime stabilization?
Yes.
Oh, they're gonna lime it?
Yes, they're gonna
Okay.
stabilize the.
Well, you said dirt, I'm
Well,
sorry,
he's
I'm
taking
getting
it down there,
technical on
yeah,
you.
and he's gonna-
And
Okay,
then
so we're gonna be lime
Yeah.
stabilization, then we're gonna cap it.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
same thing.
So it fixes
Be the same thing.
that's more than 2 weeks, all right?
No, it's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick.
Is it?
Lime stabilization,
It's
pour
not-
it
it's
in
not
there,
a
mix
long-
it, let it
Same
dry,
thing as
wet it, and
Pleasant
let it dry, it'll cover
No,
it
it's
that
what we did in
quick.
Cheeks Barger.
No.
Cheeks Burger.
No, Pleasant Run, they actually put in curbs and gutters and
Yeah,
all
it is a
that.
reconstruction.
It's contractors there.
I mean, they redid the road completely. I mean,
Difference
what
is
he's
the
talking about,
county
right?
is doing this. The county wouldn't do what you did
And they're
in Pleasant
very
Run.
good, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
We had a
right. But they are gonna do
best.
a stabilization on the, yeah, that's good. That's real good. Let it-
As far as the
Yeah, let
road's
them do
concerned.
So we should go
The
forward.
question
with
though
this.
is,
Concern.
move
That's the
forward
same
this
thing.
summer
Yeah.
Yes.
versus holding off until
The
potentially.
next construction won't start till the spring, is that right?
The roundabouts at best could start in the spring.
So we get almost a year
we
of
get-
great,
This year,
I
yeah.
mean,
I would think we would.
compelling.
We need everybody
Yeah.
really happy
Yes.
before they get really sad.
That's right.
That road's
So-
deteriorating fast.
but we do want the people that are using it to get out there.
To get rid
Well,
of
the construction
Not
of
the people that
those,
live there, the other people that are cutting through, they need to find another route.
Is there
Those
any
run-
control
Get out there with the sound
this,
and learn
these
how
heavy
that
trucks
works.
that drive
That's
through
right.
town?
you can set
No.
truck routes for our contractors. There are trucks that are coming through that are making deliveries that have a right, that have a right
You
to
can't
use
cut them
the
totally.
roads. But there are some that just unfortunately get lost. and they're just confused, and
Okay.
so
Yeah, 'cause
sometimes
that's
that
small.
happens.
And
as well.
unfortunately, some of the no truck signs are already to where a point where trucks can't turn around after they've seen the sign. So they have to follow down to go around to get that back out. But I don't, as a contractor, it's gonna be a tough one to keep them actually out of the city limits.
The one comment, though, to go with the question you asked is, the construction of these two roundabouts at the virtually same time is going to change the traffic patterns for a lot of the cut-through traffic.
Yes.
They'll go
Because
elsewhere.
those who have gotten used to taking McDonwell to John McCain, when they have these roundabouts under construction and they have the bridge on Pleasant Run under construction in South Lake, it's gonna change that whole traffic pattern. And 26 is complete.
Yes.
You now have hopefully a restoring of traffic patterns back to the previous normal.
Yeah.
Well, another part of that picture, go back to your dates. Well, y'all may or may not remember, the Pleasant Run Bridge, gonna be
Yes.
shut down for like nearly a year.
Yep.
So there's gonna be no traffic.
I was
Gonna
thinking
run in and out between South Lake and
I
Colleyville.
did not know that.
It's gonna change traffic.
I think I've been blocking it out of my brain, yes.
What are you doing?
That will
Tom?
affect me
They're
greatly.
redoing the bridge,
Yes.
ripping out the bridge,
it
raising it,
needs to
new
be.
bridge.
Yeah,
Wow, that's gonna be huge.
yeah, that's huge.
And that's starting
That'll
next
definitely
spring.
change.
Yeah.
When it starts in
Next
spring?
spring.
And that's South Lake's.
So that'll be the same as this. So if you have these two roundabouts and you have that project going on and 26 is now open,
Yeah.
people are gonna change their driving patterns.
Well, maybe that'll be for the good down the road.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah. I hope so.
So back to the conversation of the road, my opinion is to go ahead and put a cap on top of what we have now.
I think
So
so.
too.
Cap.
I know it's a little bit of money, but
They're,
I think our
they're,
residents
they're
deserve it.
hurting out
Yeah,
on,
Yeah.
on,
it's too bad.
It's a rough road.
Great.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
yeah.
Good deal. Brings us up to number 3, we need to set date for objective setting session.
Okay.
Get out your calendar.
Get out your calendar.
So what we had told ourselves before is we were gonna do it within 60 days of the election, which
Okay.
means we would do it in June, or by the end of June, if we can. What do you,
Will it be during the week?
60 days
Well-
would be July.
60 days, yeah, it'd be about 4.
There you go.
So can you,
Can-
yeah, well, so first
Can we vote
question,
to make it
do we
90
wanna,
days?
did we, see, last year, did we do it on a weekday? Did we do it?
2 evenings.
2 evenings, so we have done it on a Saturday all day, or we did it in a couple of evenings. You would prefer a couple, shorter?
I would prefer shorter in one day personally.
Okay, what are the best days?
So I am out the first and third week of June.
Okay,
Not one of those weeks.
So either one of those weeks.
okay.
And yes, that means I'll miss both council meetings.
Okay.
You planning it that way?
No,
Sounds like it.
trust me.
Okay,
So when you
so
say
you're
first and
out.
third, that starts June 3rd.
First, yeah, the
First
first
is
and
a
and
Saturday.
third week of June.
So, a lot of times what we've tried to, first and third week is, since we have council meetings on Tuesday, try to hit an alternate.
First and third week, those are the 2 weeks
Yeah,
that we have council.
right.
So like the second week?
I mean, is a Tuesday a bad
That's-
day or?
that's
decent-
good
is
for me.
presenting?
Tuesdays and
Let's
Thursdays.
meet
Time
Yeah.
is all Saturdays until
Yeah, okay.
mid-August.
Yeah.
So Callie, what do you, Tuesdays?
Tuesdays or
Tuesdays are fine.
That'd be great with me.
I can't
The
do the
Tuesdays, the off Tuesdays from,
Tuesday, the 11th and the 25th? Is that what you're-
11th, I'm gonna be out of town, but the 25th.
okay,
I'll
you're
be
out of
here.
town,
Mhm.
Tammy out,
And
11th. Okay.
I will be
Yeah,
out
I
of
can
town on the
do,
24th.
I can do the 25th.
Are you out all week, Bobby?
Yep.
Oh, he's
The
on.
week of the 24th?
We leave the 23rd and will not return till the 28th.
What days are you
Okay.
out that week, Tammy? The 11th?
So the
Okay.
17th.
All week.
The whole week?
Mhm.
What about Thursday?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thursday,
Are you out those whole weeks? Or
I
just the
come
council
back
meetings?
on Thursday both weeks,
Evening?
Thursday afternoons. I'm
yeah,
not
like.
sure, I don't have my phone
well,
with
you're
me,
out
so I don't have my
27th. So the next Thursday or
calendar.
Tuesday you back is the 20th.
I can do the 20th.
20th, what's the 20th look like? June.
Saturday.
Is Chuck gonna be back by
It's a
then?
What's the Thursday?
It's really a
When it-
check
June?
question.
June the
June
20th.
It's fine with me.
It's in July.
Or do it in the evening
I think y'all all should be doing it on the 21st while I go hit Stars and Guitars.
Yeah, we
That
do.
chance.
Not gonna happen.
There's a little plug for
So it's
Stars and
gonna
Guitars.
be the 20, is it gonna be 2 days or
Well-
1 day?
Depends on how hard you want to work the first day.
Let's work hard.
There you go.
Work really
I
hard.
can have the whole
No, the
day.
20th should be fine.
Okay, so 20th
I will be
is
back
one
on
day.
the
But he won't be back till the afternoon,
No,
right?
I'll,
No, he's-
it's Monday through Wednesday that week, so
So
Oh,
we'll
okay.
be back
So
on
let's do
Thursday.
it all day Thursday. Get it over with.
Thursday the 20th,
Can everybody do it on, can you do it that day?
make it happen.
Me too.
Woo-hoo.
Okay, we'll take a shot at
Sure,
that.
okay.
Let's go for
That
it.
was
So
too
are you
easy.
saying, Jay, you want to start like at 10 o'clock? Is that what you're saying?
I'll have the whole day. All I need to do is go to the office and make sure guys are out the gate and I can be back here. Depends on the law, man, if he stops me or not. But I can speed back here and be here by
He's
about
busy.
9:30, 10 o'clock, yes, ma'am.
Just so that we
Give me a
we
ride.
know how to start
Yeah.
to plan.
Is Dave okay with you or not?
I can make it work.
Can you? Tammy?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Callie? George? Okay.
Okay.
Mike, we'll shoot for the mid-morning start.
That was too easy.
And you guys are good. Good. All right, now, alcohol.
Now a lighter subject, huh?
Will it be here?
We talked about this a couple times before, so I'll quickly go over the details and then open up the discussion so you guys can decide
Subject.
how you want to proceed on this issue. The current Code of Ordinances provides that alcohol sales must be incidental to the sale of food. And the way that's defined is 60% of the gross receipts have to be from non-alcoholic sales. And so 60% is the number that's in the ordinance. You could change that number and then change the rule. There is no reference to the remaining 40. Alcoholic beverage on-premise consumption requires a special use permit, and obviously a restaurant could not sell alcohol without that special use permit. That process allows you to add additional conditions onto that use at that location. A TABC also then provides a permit, and there's quarterly reporting to the city secretary about the percentages of sales in these classifications. An important note is that currently our code does not provide a definition for bar or tavern, and so it's not even a permitted or special use within our regulations. The SUP process is one way you can deal with this issue in the future. You could change your rules as it relates to special uses and allow for deviations from the 60% to be handled as part of your special use process. You could obviously just change the 60% ratio if you so choose. Or you could start to differentiate bars and taverns by adding them as a classification within your zoning table, and then also provide for some of the specialty areas like specialty wine restaurants or wine bars and/or microbreweries or tasting rooms or distilleries. That way then you could differentiate between the thing that you don't want, bars and taverns, and maybe the things that might be viable in the future, these more specialty types uses. By doing that within the code, though, you're going to have to then get into a lot more detail in your definitions, and it's a little deeper discussion than maybe we can have here tonight. Just looking at the neighboring cities, one thing that's an important takeaway is that 4 out of the 5 communities surrounding us provide for alcohol as a permitted use for restaurants. They do not require a special use permit or any type of additional consideration by the council. That's unique, and 3 out of the 4 of them provide for up to 75% of the sales to be alcohol sales. The 4th is 50%, and that is Euless. But that means that they don't have the additional level of regulation we have in the special use permit. I think the special use permit is a very effective tool in setting quality standards and conditions, but it's interesting that these other communities don't have it. And as I mentioned, 3 out of the 4 actually allow for 75% without that condition. So the one that's closest to us, in my opinion, is Grapevine. Grapevine currently allows 50% alcohol sales, but does provide a conditional use permit, which is similar to our special use permit process. And so they're similar in that sense. They also, though, have adopted kind of the special conditions I just talked about relating to some of these more unique wineries and breweries and things that are of a quality nature, but that are challenging some of the traditional models as far as what a quote-unquote restaurant would be. And so looking at Colleyville and Grapevine together, you can see we're both about 80-20 in our percentage of food versus alcohol. Where Grapevine differentiates is they do have some restaurants that are above the 40%, and that represents about 16% of all their restaurants. And so what they did is broke those out and dealt with them with those special conditions. And so for your discussion tonight is, these different options that you have available to you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions while you have a discussion as to which way you want to proceed.
Back up one more.
I think we definitely need to keep the SUP in there so that that can be
Yeah.
controlled.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, so when I think about this, I think about what is it we're trying to accomplish. And I'll give you my bottom line first. My bottom line is, with what I know about Colleyville, I think, I asked city manager, and he said our restaurants are about 50-50, pretty much 50 satisfies all of them. And Grapevine, I'm good with Grapevine's approach, 50-50 with a breakout for wine tasting and stuff like that. Because in previous discussions, what I've heard, and you guys tell me if it's different than this, I was trying to figure out what is it, the ones that are proponent for changing, why do we want to change? We need to hold our standards very high, make sure we have a lot of controls, but allow the things that we think is appropriate for Colleyville. What I've always worried about is the unintended consequences. Avoid, and that's hard, avoiding unintended consequences. Grapevines seem to work pretty well because I know they have the wineries and they have the craft breweries and stuff. And if we want those things or would allow those things, that's one way to do it while keeping reasonable controls. Have come to the conclusion that probably 60-40 is too high based on what our current restaurants do. So we do want them to live within the law. So taking it to 50-50 does that, I'm fine with that because we want those restaurants here.
What about
If I missed anything or different views.
I personally think it should be flipped at a
I do
minimum.
too.
At a minimum.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And, I mean, I would be even okay with 75, and I know that sounds, I don't want bars and things like that, but there's things that have like the wine tasting where you can taste a little bit of each wine, and they have like a brick oven
Tacos.
pizza, or it's just like little nibbly things, but it's not necessarily a restaurant, but it's got
Food is
food.
inexpensive, but the wine is expensive.
Yes, and then, but I definitely think that there should be an SUP involved, so you can still have
So
Right.
when you-
say in what comes in.
So if what you're thinking of, go back to the ordinances.
I'm with Callie on that.
Any
I was
different
thinking
than-
60-40.
What you're talking about,
She says
like wine
60.
tasting.
I mean, I would even be
60,
okay with
40.
75% as long as we always saw what was coming in
So
first.
I'll just, so personally, I'm just 1 out of 7, I'm not okay with 75%. I will argue against that.
I don't like
Because I think that's
75.
too far. I can come up with no justification for it, but I'm too concerned about the unintended
Okay
consequences.
with flipping percentages?
Well, I mean, our restaurants work with 50, do our restaurants work with 50-50?
Yes.
Well, they do.
Well, somebody like me, I mean, I'm not like a
But you're
crazy
one
wild
well.
person.
You're-
But say, we want to go have a drink later, or like after dinner, in Colleyville, there's really not a ton of, and I don't want bars, but a jazz place with like wine and some snacks and food and, a nice place. So I'm not pushing for bars. That's not what I want at all.
I agree with Callie.
Like a higher end.
How do you stop bars? What's a bar, I guess, for question 1?
There's no definition. We don't
Huh?
have that. We don't have the definition.
Let me read
But
it.
doesn't an SUP allow you to see what kind of things are coming in?
Yes, it does.
But it also allows you to set other conditions. So once why go too far when you can still do what you're talking about with this?
So when you're saying, perhaps what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is where Grapevine, where they have those exceptions for the restaurants that they feel are an asset to the city, but their ratios are skewed, they've made exceptions for them.
Right.
Is that what
Right.
you're proposing?
How hard is it to get that?
But, see, it's a
As an
huge-
option.
In my experience over the years, it's a huge difference. It's a message that you send out to the world. If you say, hey, I'm gonna go 75, what's my concern about that? My concern about that is the people that hear that outside of Colleyville, that are these guys that want to create something, they hear that, man, these guys they really relaxed everything. I want to go in, and if you haven't noticed, just in residential zoning, the applicants push. They push on the standards. They always push on the standards, always. The same thing will happen here. That's why I always want to hold that standard fairly high. If we have a method in our deliberation to allow something that we think, this body thinks is good, that works.
My inclination is 50-50 is reasonable when
Yeah.
we are willing to listen to a restaurant that says, look, my menu is gonna be of this nature, like a Laveria, a Next, and I would like to sell high-end wine. I think my ratios might be skewed. I'd like to have, an exception.
Yeah.
When we know what the situation is, I think that might be a reasonable approach, and it's certainly an easier stair step from where we are.
Do you think a 60-40 would keep a bar out? I mean, I don't know of many bars that sell less than 60% of alcohol, 60% or less,
Yeah.
a bar. So I don't know if that's a concern of yours, or?
Well, I guess so you asked me why, I would say who needs 60-40?
So
What restaurant needs 60-40?
Well, if you take, again, like we were talking about high-end alcohol sales.
Yeah.
I think that brings in a higher-end clientele and restaurants that will want to come in here like a Winewood or Bob's or something like that. I know I'm just throwing names out.
Yeah.
But they do sell a higher quality of wine.
Well, I'm sure that the ones that are here, it's very difficult for them, say a Next or it's more difficult for them.
And that's that's my reasoning, no other
So
reason.
how does Next do?
But I'm not,
Well, as I understand it, they comply, but that's
I asked about
the
it.
information that we've had reported as
Yeah.
compliance.
and I just think that another 10% lets them breathe easier.
It has to be
I
hard.
think so too.
Yeah,
And
it
it's-
has to be hard.
And I think
It has to be very difficult.
From-
We're not calling any names out. We're just saying for our higher,
What are your thoughts on the other special uses, like the wine tasting room or, stuff like that? Is that a totally separate issue to you, or are you saying we should allow those as well, like make definitions for
Well,
wineries,
it's a
breweries?
total separate issue.
No, I'm generally okay with the way Grapevine approaches it, which allows for those.
I
But they
like
have to
that
come in
approach as well.
specifically and
Yes.
describe what they're talking
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
And we could ask
Yes.
a million questions about
Yes.
it.
Totally different.
But then have the authority to do it
Yes.
if we think that fits within the standards of the community.
You could
I'm feeling good about that.
So let me ask you this. If Bob's Barbecue comes in and says, hey, look, I want to sell 60% alcohol, just to let you know, and 40% food, where would it fall in for Grapevine?
Where
They
would that fall? Is
They
that
would
your-
have to meet their 50/50. And so what you'd have to do in that particular case is those establishments that they identify as exceptions, you'd have to broaden those definitions to incorporate some unique characteristics of that type of facility to comply.
Maybe it's a music venue or
So,
whatever that.
Right, it could be a venue, great example is a concert venue,
Yeah,
there's
that's-
never any food.
That's one that I'm
Exceptions.
thinking of, that if you look at like a Gas Monkey, where
Sure.
I'm sure their alcohol sales are a little
Sure.
bit higher than their food. I tend to lean towards 60-40 because I think it gives a little more, to Bobby's point, a little more breathing room, and says that we are open to that. And then we can put in exceptions such as Grapevine does, but I think it gives us, it shows that we're a little more open to some place that might be a little later evening snacks and drinks type place that we don't have right now.
But question is, would a place like that be a restaurant, or does that type of venue fall under a different
bar.
zoning?
And that's
Traditionally,
what I
what
was
you
asking,
had-
where does that fall in
Yeah.
here?
What you'd have to do in your
I don't think it'd
exceptions,
be a restaurant.
you'd have to define it, well, there could be a situation where you have a restaurant that after 8 PM, the kitchen closes. And so then they switch to more of an entertainment venue.
Like the
And
rustic,
so-
for example.
Yes, and so in those particular cases, that would have to be clarified within your exception rules that that's allowed. The traditional model we're talking about here is much easier to define, and that's a restaurant that really has very, very limited food and a very, very high-end wine menu, or maybe has some type of a whiskey collection or some type of distilled product that they offer that's extremely high-end, and so it skews all of their results. The new modern thing now is a lot of individuals who are starting their own breweries, where they have tasting rooms, and primarily their focus is selling beer that they've brewed, and they tend not to have a lot of food. And so that's what Grapevine's trying to carve out. You can do the same thing in carving out the quote-unquote restaurant that transitions at some point. And the way you do that is you have very specific hours of operation. It does get a little harder to do that, and you get further and further down the road, because to the mayor's question, at what point does a restaurant become a bar? Very difficult to draw that line and determine when they've crossed it for compliance. And so you've got to be very careful. Traditionally, when you have specific issues that are part of their sale, wine only, or some type of a specific whiskey, or a specific product that's brewed on site or within X amount of miles, you can limit it. Once you, though, get to the more generic open bar concept, you're hard pressed unless you have some type of
Sounds like a
percentage
bar.
waste.
If we were to go, I'm just playing a little devil's advocate on this one, if we go 60/40 and still have the SUP, we would be able to eliminate, or limit what these restaurants and breweries, wineries, distilleries, tasting rooms would be able to do anyways, correct?
Yes, but with the wineries and the breweries and distilleries are really designed to get potentially even beyond the 75%. They're getting to a point where they don't have any, a lot of them have very little or no food.
But I'm thinking of a restaurant brewery really that looked at Colleyville briefly. It doesn't work out for numerous reasons, but they were exactly the kind of business I think is a good fit for our community, which is a unique local chain. Like I think it's Catering Brewery, I think is what they're called. Is that right?
Yeah.
So they were looking there on 121, and they brew their own beer. And that would be their primary business, but they also sell some food that families will sit out on the back porch and they eat hamburgers and stuff. So food would never be their primary business, but people are not going there and hanging out late at night and causing trouble. It's not a bar in that sense either. So I think that's the kind of business we do want to attract.
Yeah, right, so the micro, so I think
Yes,
of the
they fit into the
microbrewery. So
microbrewery.
I've been to one in Keller, and there's one in Grapevine.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know if you've ever been
Ton
to
of
one
them
in
in
Keller.
Fort Worth.
I assume it's still there, I don't know.
There's a lot of them now.
Yeah, there's
around.
a lot of them, and that's fine if that's what we want here. They tend to be more industrial looking.
There's a huge variety now
Yeah.
of those types of.
Yeah, I've seen
Well,
some very, very high-end
Yes,
ones.
yes.
What I'm just saying,
Yes.
that brewery category is where I put that.
I agree with you 100%. Yes, I don't think it falls into the restaurant category. I think
Right,
it's
outside
special
the
use, we
restaurant
define its hours very carefully.
Right,
I mean,
Right.
How about
So-
60/40?
So would anybody be open to splitting the difference and say 55-45?
I don't know
Difference
that it
on the
really
rounding
makes that
out.
much of a difference at
Yeah.
that point. I think
I'm
we'll
just trying to,
he's trying to
I'm-
ease
No, I-
things and I like it.
but
I
that
think the
gives the
key is the
emphasis that we're
SUP.
open to,
I think everyone's on board with the SUP staying in place.
Yes.
Yeah,
That-
no
Gotta be
issue there.
controlled, yeah.
It's just a
No way we'll get rid of
percentages
One-
conversation.
Yeah, one thing I'm wondering, I mean, somebody mentioned Bob's or those more high-end steak restaurants up in Grapevine. it- It's kind of hard for me to believe they stay within 50, well, because it's not there, Bob says.
Well,
Aren't
and that's
those
the,
places
that's
that
the
didn't
question
report
is,
exactly the
are-
numbers?
again, I'm not calling anybody out, but everybody's,
self-reporting.
exactly,
Oh, okay.
right.
So-
And I want it to be easier for them to be able to not have to work so hard, not that we know that they are, I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying make it easier for them to run a business and not worry about that.
I agree.
Well, let me ask you a more generic question. Does the percentage really matter if we control it within SUP?
Well, I
always
think it does,
think it
because
does.
it would be attractive for restaurants or business, or, you know.
Well, no,
Places
what
to
I'm
go
saying
down.
is that we'll evaluate each one on its individual merits instead
I
of.
think you can do
I can give
that.
you an answer on that, is if you have somebody who traditionally has a restaurant, and that restaurant has a bar component, and over time, they take the tables and chairs out of the restaurant, they would have converted in essence, or they go from low tops to high tops, they've converted to a bar, maybe put a few TVs up.
Sure.
I've actually worked in places where we regulated the number of TVs on the wall in an effort to try to address this kind of thing, to address this transition.
Sure.
And so we defined sports bar, and then we defined tavern and bar as opposed to restaurant. And it's very difficult once they have a license and the ownership stays intact.
Yep.
If the ownership changes, certainly you have another bite at the apple, the SUP goes away. If for some reason the place closes, the SUP or changes names, or any of those types of things, but if the owner transitions in phase and they have a full license that allows for them to sell a full bar assortment, you're hard pressed in how they operate unless you've got some type of a mandated threshold
Well,
upon which.
And I'm
you
not
can't
saying
close.
that we blow it away completely, I'm saying we mandate it on an individual basis based on what they present.
I don't like that.
I see what you're saying, Chuck, but here's the other thing also. We want restaurants, whenever they're looking through, they're saying, oh, what does Colleyville have? Here's their ratio. We want them to have some type of threshold, and then we'd also have what you're saying, you know, the SUP in a way of an individual. If they think they're gonna go over 60%, they come before council, then we'd be able to do that. Is that correct? Am I saying that
No,
correctly?
we're saying SUP for everything.
Yeah.
So no
Just like
matter
this.
what.
They
I always have
I
to
think,
give out
yeah, for
a
everything.
cap for.
A
like
second
right now
part of
we-
the SUP,
yes.
basically, a second, yeah.
Two phases of it is what I'm trying to say.
And what you
Right,
do
they
to
could
differentiate here
60%.
that you don't have now is, right now, you only have restaurants identified as uses within your zoning. So you would provide for these other types of uses, bar, tavern, as one being a special use, which you probably never grant. The other being these specialty uses that would be identified so that there's a very clear understanding that that application is applying for that use, thus the conditions are in line with that use. And so you don't have this transition taking place. They all kind of stay in their lanes through the life of the license.
Yeah.
In that case, I would tend to lean towards 60-40.
Yeah, with a similar model to the way Grapevine
The
is, but
similar
60-40.
model, the way Grapevine is, that we could grant a special use beyond that.
I know you
Well,
don't
my
like it.
question is, what have we kept out of here if we were at 50/50? What could not have come in that wanted to come in?
I know there have been at least 2 restaurants, and Kitty Brewery is one of them. It's not a restaurant necessarily, but
Is
it's a
that the Kitty
business
Trail?
that,
I saw
Kitty
this.
Trail, yeah, that one.
Yeah, Kitty Trail.
And there's another one, I don't know the name,
Yeah,
but
but
I
you
can get
just
it
said
for you.
something very important to me.
That, yes.
It's not a restaurant.
No, but I
So
think
what-
it's a business that's attractive to the
Yeah,
community.
but that's
Okay.
important, because we're
Yes.
talking about a restaurant.
restaurant
We're-
specific.
When we say 60/40, 50/50, we're talking about the restaurant category.
Exactly.
I'm
So
with
the
you.
question
Okay.
becomes, if you're really a restaurant and you gotta go to 60, why? What is a
Because if
restaurant?
you're drinking
I like
wine,
good
it's
wine.
I mean,
expensive.
well, it relates to what kind of restaurant are you? Are you high-end restaurant?
Yes.
You sell high-end food or not? That's the
Yes.
next thing that comes to my mind.
Yes, it's not bar
Because you,
food.
you may need the bigger percentage if you're really in low-end food and you're selling a lot of.
Well,
No, I
that's,
think
I
it's
think that's the
split.
problem right
Yeah.
there, what you just said, Mayor, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of places in here that do sell high-end foods
Yeah.
with high-end liquors, but if you come in and want a burger, and everybody orders a burger, and it's
Yeah.
$10, and you're gonna order a bottle of Scarecrow, which is an $800 bottle of wine,
You're in big trouble.
now all of a sudden you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're gonna have a hard time.
But remember, we're in a town where people can do that. I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to throw money
Even a
in the air.
$50
I'm
bottle
just
of
saying.
wine throws that ratio off fast,
Yeah,
you know, I
and that's the
mean,
only reason
That's the
I just don't
concern.
want people to
More than
cringe
four
and go,
people,
well, we
that's
can't
fine.
do that. We can't come with this concept because they're
So,
food
okay.
alcohol ratios.
So, we're gonna have to move on. But one last, on your example, you said $800 bottle of wine and a hamburger.
Okay.
Sure.
How many times, I don't
Okay,
believe that's
time
gonna
out. I know a
happen.
guy,
I believe it will
I'll
happen.
take you to dinner.
I know a guy who goes into a high-end restaurant and orders a burger, doesn't eat the bun, but orders double McAllen 12s quite often.
Yeah.
And his bill is $200. How much of that is the burger? Took $15 of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not
How many-
dishing
how
you,
many-
I'm just saying, I know
I
there's
got
people
you,
out
I
there.
got you.
I just want to,
And that's not
Spend
me,
my
I don't
money
like,
to
I
go
don't like
to.
McAllen's, so, huh?
that's the, and yes.
So
It's
so you
probably
got,
a rare case,
I mean,
but-
there's 7 of us, I'm just one,
I know.
so we can move forward.
You're our
the
favorite
next
mayor.
steps.
What do we do next? The next step is we need direction, because we'd prepare an ordinance amendment to
Right.
bring to the full council.
Well, would you want to know what each of us thinks?
Sure.
60/40.
60,
I'm
40.
on board with 60-40.
I think 60.
I am too, sir.
60/40.
Very good. Got your direction.
Ben said he's ready to work.
With
That would just be
plenty of controls.
code.
I think
What
that's
does
the
Ben
key.
have? Oh.
Absolutely.
Gotta get our zoning and codes up to.
once you got the 60 though,
snuff.
that's where they're coming in.
You got
Okay.
all that practice with definitions, Ben, so now.
Yeah,
you
it's gonna get tougher now, Ben.
This will be.
It's gonna get tougher.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the only thing, we have one item tabled, that'll stay tabled, that people have not come back. They wanted to be tabled, but our expectation was they would talk to the city, so we'll leave it tabled tonight.
Oh, no, they are going to be here tonight.
Oh, we're talking about the fence?
They never reached
It
out
is-
at all. I didn't talk.
Okay,
I talked to them last week.
well, they're staying on the table because I had several citizens call up here today, ask that question, and the answer I got every time was nothing. And so we told those citizens that were really concerned about this, they're not gonna be here tonight. So no way in hell I'm bringing it off the
So
table.
let's let them
No,
know
we're
it's
not
the next
gonna
meeting.
be there.
That means no.
No, I think we just let everyone know it's gonna be the
Tell
next
them
meeting.
so you're not
because
Well,
it's
that's
not fair,
fair, because
right?
the
Because
people
that
aren't
makes
gonna be
it-
here.
You can't do that.
No,
No,
absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
I think it stays
Stay at the
tabled.
table next
Bring
meeting.
it up at the next meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
No, I think you felt
No,
strongly
it's-
about that.
Yeah,
I
I
agree
want
with
everyone
you.
to know
Is
what's
that
what we were
actually what you
saying.
wanted to say, the alcohol ratio?
Yeah, he's
He's
still
getting
fired up.
it in either way.
How do
He
we,
fired it in.
how can we put it on the agenda that it's absolutely gonna be taking?
Well, if they're ready, we can send a note to that whole neighborhood, because they're the one,
I know
let 'em-
that.
it's gonna be on
Well-
there next time.
Kim, should we take it off the table, say that we're going to review it at the next meeting and then
No, I'll
put
say
it back on the
that.
table?
I'll say that without taking it off. We don't have to take it off the table, so.
That's-
Because
we wanna
I'm
wait till
really,
the end, or
even
we-
one fellow brought up a 2-page letter today. He was so concerned. Another lady called, and they were all wanting to know, hey, because they would be here for sure, and we told them it wasn't.
The other thing that I think I noticed that we probably want to enhance in the paperwork is when folks come and speak previously,
Yeah.
we need to note that that opposition happened during the last meeting. I didn't see that when I was reading through it
Okay.
this time. Because I
With the
had
previous
somebody who
opposition.
contacted my wife and said, hey, I can't be there,
Yeah.
but I spoke last time.
And some of these questions, some people were confused about what was going on. One fellow said, well, why didn't you guys just deny the variance? Well, there were reasons that were probably a lot more subtle that were very important to be dealt with. So there's some complexity to this case, and need to be really clear. So next meeting we'll be ready to really deal with that.
Can you move it to the front and let them know right away?
Sure, we can do that. I'll let them know right up front.
Yeah, so they don't have to sit there.
Well, yeah, once we get back up on that, please.
Mayor, would you also please address the corrected briefing for 7C?
Yes, that's been passed out.
I'm distributing
Yeah, okay,
another
so-
one because I made another error in the correction.
So in your briefing material, this table had a lot of inaccuracies because, in it, and transcription errors, so this is a new one, so these numbers are correct. Has to do with the,
And she corrected that.
yeah,
Wow, those
has
are
to do with the, Colleyville Center.
mistakes of my day.
Okay, are we done? Anything else?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Can we do that?
We're doing the audit report after this.
Financial, in fact, city manager gonna do the financial report and then.
You make it quick.
Where are all of your
I'll make it real
assistants?
quick.
Good, because
They're all at the
Oh, Las Vegas.
shopping center convention.
You let them all go to Vegas.
Ready to close the work session?
Yes, sir.
Okay, work session closed at 6:38.
Stays in Vegas.
And we're,
Yeah, I know, there's nothing really except for the sales tax.
so we're gonna be
Sales tax
moving in
work
executive session in
So, yeah.
accordance with Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Section 551.071 legal, Section 551.072 real estate, Section 551.074 personnel, and Section 551.087 economic development. We're now in executive session.
That's
You have
these
to get
things
out
would be
here.
in trouble to us.
We would be.
I mean, it's your 24
These are operating right now.
Congratulations.
Bonds.
Thank you.
I've worked with a lot of city officials in my life. I've never seen anything like this. I've really got it. Yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to figure out something that we can rope in after they. Well, they probably will deserve a rest, but I don't think it'll go away. Oh, I hope not. I hope not either. I think the spouses should all have. that one, Chuck.
Bye.
I'm just making sure there's no, no bomb material. He left his phone at home. Yep, it's on running.
God.
Thank you.
Ben didn't know.
Oh,
Talked
sorry.
to a great police officer who married into a family that property at LD Lockett precinct.
Okay.
Jack was around for 15 years trying to sell that land. He said last year he had a deal where it was parceled out to different entities for $4 million, and they said no to that, so we just sold it.
How are you, sir?
You can't mess with the church.
Whatever. I've had no conversations with anyone about that parcel. But if you ever hear that, please encourage them to call me, because I have no problem talking with people. I mean, it's sometimes half the battle is just getting face-to-face time and just hearing them out and working with them. So if you want to give them my information, please feel free to do so.
Well, I mean, Ben pushed the button on his computer and it shows that.
People feel like we're responsive to them and that they can talk to us anytime. Even if we disagree, that's okay.
I mean, you know, when they had it, the deal
I love
fall
it.
apart, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
How's it going?
That's the consent. Jerry, do you know how to turn these lights on? That's the,
What's that?
Oh, okay, because I.
No, but I'll find out.
yeah, that's this.
No. Like when we first started.
It's kind of dark out here.
Mr.
Hi,
Grummer,
how are you?
what's up, buddy?
Good to see you.
Let there be light, there was light, and he saw that it was good.
Ooh. Ooh, look at you, girl. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for coming.
Slip in.
Hi, Jerry DeKay.
Nice. Kathy. Yes. Callie's down
Yeah,
there.
used to,
Here.
not
Yes.
anymore.
Yes, nice to see you.
What's up, buddy? I got quiet.
We have a gentleman.
There he is, city attorney's coming.
We have a gentleman in the middle with the hat. He's been a little rowdy.
Yeah, he's a troublemaker.
Haven't seen him here for a while. Get my clock out of here. Oh, yeah, we're late? Okay. So we're going to call the regular city council meeting of the city of Colleyville to order on May 21st, 2019 at 7:34. We're now in order. First thing I need to do is call the roll. Councilmember Nakamura,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood,
Here.
Mayor's here, Councilmember Dodson,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Rigney.
Here.
Just for the record, Councilmember Wheat's here too.
Oh, did I?
Who's that?
I skipped you.
Who is
So
that?
glad you're here.
Okay.
Trying to tell you.
You're so special, I was going to do you last.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we open first, but with invocation. So Rabbi Charlie Citron Walkers from Congregation Beth Israel is going to open in prayer for us. Then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
As the City Council of Colleyville opens its meeting this evening, we say Mazel Tov, congratulations, as we welcome in new and returning members to the council. And we ask God, whatever you conceive God to be, to open our hearts and minds to one another, so that we're willing to judge one another and the issues that come before this council with justice. Jewish tradition and all traditions feel that we should judge others with a sense of justice. And yet Rabbi Joseph Telushkin refers to Leviticus 19:15, "In justice shall you judge your fellow," as the, quote, ignored commandment. Rabbi Jack Reamer explains that the ability to discern and make judgments is a natural and valuable gift, but a dangerous one. He writes, "We can use it to distinguish between good and evil, but so often we misuse it by making judgments without knowing enough facts or without the sympathy and the empathy that we ought to show towards other human beings. When someone comes before us, citizen or elected official, stranger or friend, giving people the benefit of the doubt, actively seeking out opposing points of view, and looking to understand before passing judgment. This is what leads to wisdom and justice. For none of us are perfect. While we understand that, and we hope that other people will judge us with compassion when we make mistakes, for we all will, sometimes we fail to find that same empathy when judging others. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's certainly not a lot of empathy for our very human elected leaders. As our mayor and council members seek to understand our community, may our community give each of you the benefit of the doubt. To judge with justice. We are all encouraged to judge others with humility and compassion, and acknowledge that since we don't know everything, we start with curiosity rather than condemnation. We attempt to keep an open mind and endeavor to understand all sides of an issue. As the new year of our city council begins, may we look for the good and the many gifts that our council and all who come before them offer. May we be guided to show one another the same empathy we hope others will offer us as we strive to judge with justice. We thank you for our mayor and our city council, for its work, and for the opportunity to take part in our democracy.
Amen.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rabbi, thank you so much for those words and the prayer. We really appreciate you being here, and we're so glad that you're in our community and your congregation is. We will always stand with you and behind you under any circumstances. You're welcome. So as I thank you all for being here. Have a good crowd tonight. Thank you so much. I always say this, so I'm going to say it again. We do have it's a short agenda tonight, but we do have a couple of items where we will have a public hearing. You're welcome to speak at any public hearing. If you want to speak, there's cards in the back. If you'd fill it out, we'd appreciate it. But if you don't, you're still welcome to speak, so I will not close a public hearing without asking if everyone has spoken that would like to speak. So with that, we will move to agenda item 2, which we must do first, which is reading and public hearing of items that come out of executive session. And tonight we do have, have executive session just before this meeting. We do have 2 items, so we're going to have 2 resolutions and public hearings tonight coming out of executive session. Because we cannot act in executive session, we have to come out into the public and take any action. So that's what we're doing. So let me start with the resolution R-19-4384, resolution approving council action regarding executive session items at the regular city council meeting of May 21, 2019. Whereas following discussion in the executive session and in full accordance with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, the city council determines that the following action is in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Now therefore be it resolved by the city council of the city of Colleyville, Texas, section 1, that the city council hereby authorizes and approves a real estate acquisition in the amount of $35,844 plus associated closing cost for the purchase of right-of-way at 6401 West Coast Drive, and it is so resolved. Was Ray going to give us comments on this? Do you have those slides that you showed us so the public knows what we're talking about?
Mayor, I did not load those as
Sorry.
part of this presentation, not knowing if we would go forward
Okay.
with the purchase.
You can tell us in general what this is, or I can, either one.
Sure. This is the final right-of-way acquisition for the McDowell School Road roundabout. And with the acquisition of this roundabout, we've completed all the right-of-way necessary to make this project go forward.
So we're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
Very good. Everybody's going to be happy to hear that.
All right.
When do you think timing on that approximately will be?
So we're at 90% plans right now, getting comments on those. We'll probably start looking to advertise this project towards the fall of this year.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Any comments or questions for Ray?
I'd just like to thank Juliana Garrison for her being cooperative and helping us. She's been an asset to our city, and hats off to you. I appreciate it, Ms. Garrison.
Yes, yes, that was the final piece of right-of-way that we needed for that, and I want to thank Councilmember Wheat here and her subdivision,
That's right.
which gave us property for the other right-of-way that was needed for that.
I figured you needed to thank her because you
Yeah.
forgot her earlier. So.
Yes. I'll do whatever I can. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I'm going to open the public hearing on this item. Public hearing is open. So I have no cards. Anyone wish to speak on this item, you're welcome to. I see no one indicating they want to speak, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. So I guess, Ms. City Secretary, you want us to vote manually?
No, we can.
No, you got it? Okay, would you open the vote? Need a motion? Then we'll open the vote.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve Resolution R-19-4384.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood, and I think a second by Councilmember Nakamura. So would you open the vote, please? Okay. May show it when you have it.
Councilmember Rigney, are you having trouble? No. You finally made it. Thank you.
Did you vote?
You
voted?
I got it. Okay, the motion is approved, therefore the resolution is approved. Thank you. We have one more coming out of executive session, and this is so we'll have a reading and public hearing. Resolution R-19-4384-1. A resolution approving council action regarding executive session items at the regular city council meeting of May 21, 2019. Whereas following discussion in executive session and in full accordance with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, the city council determines that the following action is in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Colleyville, Texas, Section 1, that effective April 1, 2019, the city manager's base salary shall be increased by an amount equal to 5% of his current base salary, and the city manager shall be entitled to a waiver of Texas Municipal Retirement System contributions. All other compensation and benefits currently provided to the city manager shall remain unchanged, and it is so resolved. So this is pretty self-evident. Clearly, tonight, the city council discussed the city manager and his performance in our executive session, and so this is to change his salary. All of the other employees, this has already been done, so he's the last one to do it, and this has been factored into the budget. Anyone else wants to make any comment or open the public hearing?
I think his
We all,
Yes.
His performance is very self-evident, and he's been a significant asset to the city in every way.
agree.
Yeah, I think he's helped both us newer members of the council as well as the other members of the council be able to make wise decisions, and I think his knowledge and ability to guide all of us has been very evident.
Very good.
And it's let us know that government doesn't have to take all day long to get something done. Jerry gets it done very quickly. When a citizen reaches out and we get it back to him, you no longer, I mean, you hit the send button and he's got an answer back to you. It's just amazing, and for that, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the attitude that you brought to the city also, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yeah, and at the risk of making his head get too big, I have said for years, Bob Stripling was city manager here for probably 9 or so years back in the 90s and early 2000s, and I've always said Bob Stripling was the best city manager in this country. I now say Jerry Duque is the best city manager in this country, and I mean that very sincerely. I haven't. And I think we're very fortunate to have him. So,
It's an honor to serve this community. Absolute honor.
glad you're here. Okay, with that, I'm going to open a public hearing. Public hearing is
Do we need a
open.
motion?
Well, I need to haven't had a public hearing yet. So you may speak, Mrs. Hennessy.
I'm in trouble now.
Yeah. She speaks her mind, yes.
Kathleen Hennessy, 5013 Stonebridge Drive. What is this 5%? It should be at least 10%.
Whoa. Wow.
I always like Mrs.
Yeah, all of a sudden you like her, huh?
Anyone else wish to speak? You may. I see no one else indicating that they would like to speak, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Now a motion is on order.
I move the adoption of Resolution R19-4384-1.
A second.
Yeah, I have a motion to approve by Councilmember Dodson and a second by Councilmember Wheat. We're going to vote electronically? Or do you have it in?
Yeah.
Okay,
She's on it.
it's open.
Faster on the draw, Callie.
And you may show it whenever it's ready. The motion is approved. Resolution approved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, let me make one quick announcement. There is an item on this agenda that is a tabled item. We did, as agenda item 9, and we had several calls about that today, whether it was going to stay on the table. It is going to stay on the table tonight, but there may be somebody here, and the applicants may be here, so I didn't want you to have to wait to the end to find that out. So we're not going to remove agenda item 9 from the table tonight. Next meeting, it will be removed from the table. So with that, back to next step here is the oath of office. So we'll individually take our oaths of office, and after that, we're going to break for 20 or 30 minutes and have a reception. I think we have punch and cake and give us time to talk to one another. Then we'll come back up here and proceed. So with that, I guess I'll go first.
Linda's like, what?
Would you like to have your family come up?
I do. I want my lovely wife to come up here with me.
That's the real boss.
That's the boss. Tells me everything to do. Used to absolutely. I do it. I do it a lot of the time. If it wasn't for her, I would not be here.
If you will just face the audience there, and I'll give you the oath, and if you will repeat after me. In the name and by the authority
In the name and by the authority
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
I, Richard Newton,
I, Richard Newton,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office of Mayor, City of Colleyville,
the duty of the office of Mayor, City of Colleyville,
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
and the ordinances and resolutions of this city,
and the ordinances and resolutions of this city,
So help me God.
so help me God. So, thank y'all so much, and thank you for being here. I really do appreciate this. So who's next? Councilmember Nakamura?
Nakamura.
So let's see if we can all get through without flubbing it up. I think I did.
Too much.
Save the best for last then on flubbing something up, man. I'm telling you. I should have went in the middle.
I think you must have come from the golf course.
You should still be on, are you?
Hello? Yes.
I'm going to keep my distance so that we don't conflict here. In the name and by the authority
In the name and by the authority
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
I, Tammy Nakamura,
I, Tammy Nakamura,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office of Council Member, Place 1,
the duties of the office of Council, Place 1,
City of Colleyville,
City of Colleyville,
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution, laws,
and laws of the United States and of this state,
and of this state,
and the ordinances and resolutions of this city.
and the ordinances and resolutions of this city.
So help me God.
So help me God. And all my friends out there, thank you all for coming.
Hello. That's how we used to. That's the way our songs began in the 80s back when we would scratch the disc. I'm telling you, it sounded just like that. Look, bunch of 80 people out here. All right, Tam. Come on, kids. Yeah, kids, come on. Yeah.
Yes.
Guess what? I put you on the spot for a reason. Hey, before we get started, could I just say that today is my 25th anniversary to the most beautiful woman in the world. I had to pay her to stick around.
Is that other microphone, does it need to come up? Wasn't it up before?
I think it's just,
Oh, okay,
it might have been my battery. Good call, Wayne.
okay.
Are you ready?
I think so. Do I need to raise my right hand?
If you would like. I, Bobby Lindemoon,
I, Bobby Lindemood,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I have not, I'm reading you the wrong oath,
Y'all did that on purpose, didn't you?
that I do not want,
Start all over. No, I'm teasing. Go ahead.
in the name and by the authority
In the name and by the authority
of the state of Texas,
of the great state of Texas,
I, Bobby Lindemoon,
I, Bobby Lindemood,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office,
of Council Member, Place 2, City of Colleyville,
oh boy, of the
Council Member, Place 2,
council member, place 2,
City of Colleyville,
city of Colleyville,
of the
I'm
state of
nervous.
Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
and the ordinances and resolutions
and of the ordinances and resolutions
of this city.
of this city.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay, so I want to thank all of you so much for several things. One, for being here, but more than that is all the work that I know nearly every one of you in this audience put in on our campaigns. You work so diligently and so hard, and we really, really, really do appreciate it and appreciate you, everything you do. So thank you so much, and we're going to go into recess for 20 or 30 minutes. We're in recess. I have punch. Okay, picture. Yeah, yeah, okay.
That's hilarious.
There's cake and punch back here.
You know they're gonna do that? That's funny. That's great.
to know, have I forgotten Tammy before, maybe? On
Yes.
votes I have, on votes I have.
Yeah, I'm voting, for sure.
Call them up, Mayor, let's go.
You
So I can
ready?
get out of here, yeah.
Okay.
What are y'all gonna go do?
Glorious, just a quick dinner together. All right.
Okay.
I love it.
Yes.
All the council members about ready?
That's not a good question to ask Tammy.
Oh, we are going to start. How's
That's
that?
We have a quorum.
You gotta say it 6 more times, so Tammy will come up here. You gotta say it
We do.
6 more times.
I see Tammy. He's
That's-
not even listening.
Miss Nakamura.
No, she's. Wait. Well, we'll just start. She'll show up. She'll show up.
She's working her way over. Maybe not.
Tammy Nakamura. She puts us on
Oh,
anymore.
we'll start.
Aging
Exactly.
Okay.
Bless the whole group.
Y'all ready?
1 and 6.
Oh, Callie. Where's Callie?
Callie Rigney.
Kelly,
Callie Rigney.
where'd she go? I don't
She's
see
right here too.
her. Oh,
We're going to get him out of here as fast as we can. Okay. Well, that was a nice reception.
Yes, it
Really appreciate everybody coming. Okay, we're all here, so I'm going to reconvene the meeting at 8:30, and we will move to agenda item number 5, which is announcements, proclamations, and presentations. And surprise, surprise, I have no announcements. Does anybody have announcements?
I have
Oh,
one.
Kathy.
Well, I just wanted to remind everybody that next Friday, I think it's May 31st, is the kickoff of the kids' library program, summer program. So it's from 6 to 8 p.m., and we'd love to see everybody there.
Good.
I have one. If anybody wants to sign up for the car show, registration is until, is it over? Up to, it's on June the 1st. So bring your hot rods and your cars and trucks and
10
come
to
up.
1.
Library Friday night, car show Saturday morning.
June
There you go.
1st.
There you go.
Very good.
Like it.
Very good. Any others? Callie, do you have one? No.
I don't think so,
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
We're good.
Okay, if we're through with announcements, then we're going to move to agenda item number 6, which is the first thing we do after swearing people in, is the election of Mayor Pro Tem. So the way we'll do this is just someone make a nomination, and we'll vote. If there's just one, if there's more than one, we'll vote by name.
I make a nomination to keep the one we have, Bobby Lindamood.
I'll second.
All right, very good. We have a motion by Councilman Nakamura to move that Bobby Lindamood be voted Mayor Pro Tem, a second by Councilmember Wheat.
Are you sure, Kathy? I mean, it's a great honor. I'm teasing her.
Okay. All right, then we're ready to vote.
Watch it. I'll take it back.
Councilmember Nakamura, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lindamood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Wheat?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. Councilmember Dodson?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Rigney?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem is now Bobby Lindamood again.
Thank you.
Motion
Appreciate it.
passed. Thank you. Yeah.
We'll be exiting.
Do you want to sneak out of here?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank
This
you.
is his 25th wedding anniversary, so go.
I better
have
go
fun.
before the real
Yeah,
boss gets
you're
on.
in big trouble.
LA takes so long, so.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move to agenda item number 7, which is a consent resolution. Resolution R-19-4385, a resolution approving city council action under consent items at the regular city council meeting of May 21, 2019. Whereas city council has taken action on certain items on the agenda under consent items. Now therefore be it resolved by the city council of the city of Colleyville, Texas, section 1, that the agenda decisions approved by City Council action under consent items as follows are hereby adopted. A, approval of the minutes of the special City Council meeting of May 14, 2019. B, approval of a construction contract with MSB Constructors, Inc. for the Colleyville Center Courtyard Facility Enhancement Project in the amount not to exceed $347,069 and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract. So just for y'all that are in the audience or maybe watching on TV, the minutes of the special city council meeting is when we canvass the votes. So that was about a 10-minute meeting to canvass the votes. And want to tell us about the contract?
My first appearance in front of you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Leslie Hill, the manager of the Colleyville Center, for those of you that don't know me. At 21 years of age, the Colleyville Center hosts over 300 events a year. We bring in over 25,000 guests annually to our community building. And in our efforts to continue to remain competitive and provide an attractive facility for Colleyville residents and our nonprofit groups, as well as local businesses in our community, the city engaged Heidel and Associate Architects to prepare a conceptual design last year to expand the center footprint and to include an outdoor courtyard area. Over the last year, staff has met 3 times with 11 members, with the 11-member Colleyville Center Advisory Committee, as well as City Council last May in a work session. During these meetings, we gathered suggestions and input on the initial courtyard concept design. The enhancements garnered from these meetings included not only the courtyard, but the repair of damaged palladium windows and rotting window trim, as well as some interior improvements to the front stage facade and columns. The feature that remains extremely exciting to residents, and I know the advisory committee, is the 3,900 square foot courtyard with a water feature and a metal trellis for wedding ceremonies. A masonry brick wall will eventually enclose the landscape brick paved courtyard. The Colleyville Center Enhancements and Courtyard Project went to bid this spring following standard city practice and public notification, with 37 plan holders responding. On May 9th, we received 3 sealed bids, which were obviously opened. Of the bids received, MSB Constructors has been identified and recommended by Heidel and Associates to be the best value to the city of Colleyville, with a bid of $347,069. A firm time for work performance has been established from May 21st, which is today, so I'm hoping I get your approval, with an August 16th completion date. We have included financial penalties are included if construction is not completed at that time. So I'd like to introduce Aaron Babcock with Heidel and Associates to go over both the scope and the budget for this project.
Okay, very good.
Mayor, council members, there we go, sorry. So the scope of the project really did consist of 2 things. We did some upgrades to the interior meeting room, the existing meeting room itself, and the courtyard will be located directly east of the existing meeting room that's there. Part of the scope included taking 2 of the large picture windows and modifying them to include patio doors that will lead out from the existing meeting room out onto that new courtyard area. Within the meeting room itself, we are upgrading the stage doors and trim. They've been in disrepair over the years, and we're upgrading them to a new laminate, giving them a new look, and putting a new hinge system on them so they'll be a little bit more durable moving forward. The courtyard itself, as Leslie said, it has masonry walls on 2 of the sides. It will have a fountain, and it will have a trellis feature in it as well. I'm going to skip ahead if I know how to do that.
Aaron, is it on?
I don't know, no, of course not. Sorry about that. The windows themselves are the 2 outside existing windows. We have the trim at the stage, and then we're putting trim around the columns. The existing columns, they've been damaged over the years with tables and chairs. We're going to actually put a laminate on that and a wainscot trim, so it'll be much more durable and last. The outside courtyard itself, we're keeping 3 of the existing trees, doing landscaping and having the trellis structure towards the southern exposure. The costs themselves, we did do an original budget with the conceptual design. We originally had about 319,000, or we had 273,000 in there. We did increase the scope of the project over the last year, identifying some of the repairs that needed to happen inside the facility as well as the trellis. So overall, our budget originally was around 373,000. The total budget of the project, including professional fees, as well as soils testing and topo that were done to create the construction documents, all totaled $401,000.
Could you describe that trellis?
Sure. So the trellis structure itself will backdrop against one of the new masonry walls.
Okay.
And it is a metal structure. So it's not wood, it's metal. It'll be durable, but it actually is a trellis. So it's not a covered area, but it will serve as a backdrop or stage area. It will have lighting as well as power and water so that Leslie can have different types of events as the backdrop there.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Anyone have?
Leslie, I have a question for you. I'm assuming, do you have to cut out any dates for services for people throughout this process?
We will not, well, we're going to be shutting down our weekend events from July through the third week of August.
Okay.
But we will be renting out the meeting rooms, the smaller conference room.
Okay, so it's about a 3-week period? It's
More like
Right.
about a
Sounds like 5, yeah.
8-week.
Oh, I thought, so the large room is the one that's closed down for about 8 weeks. And so I'm assuming you've taken that into account.
Yeah, we're going to start with the stage area, and then once that's completed, it will allow me I can bring people into the north and south. But initially, we're not booking anything right now in case there is a timeline override.
Okay. Thank you.
Historically, in July and August,
That's slow.
it's very slow because a lot of the nonprofits they're not meeting. And also people are on summer vacations. We do get some bookings on the weekends, but I think impact-wise, I will probably be losing probably 5 weekend events.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. It'll be done by August 16th. Very good. Or be fine, yeah. Okay, no other questions? If there's no other questions, I'm going to open the public hearing. Thank you. So public hearing is open. We have cards. Kathy Hadley.
I have a story to tell very quickly about this. All the way back in the 70s, when my mother was like garden club president and women's club president, they would meet in our house because they had no place to meet. And my mother and the ladies got together and they decided, I believe it was women's club, I wish she was here to tell the story, would set aside money to have a community center one day. And voila, you can thank those ladies for having that vision and putting aside money to get that thing going. And yes, it does need some improvements already, and it's heavily used. I would like to, once again, keep their feet to the fire, make sure the job gets done, it doesn't drag out forever, because it is highly used, and people that live in other areas have their engagements at this place. So I approve. Thanks.
Thank you. That's all the cards have. Anyone else want to speak? See, yes, you may, Mrs. Rogers.
Nancy Rogers, 1612 Cherry Lane. I was wondering, that new construction is going to be on the east side. How close is that to Bluebonnet? How about the shrubbery or the trees? What all's going to be involved? And it's pretty narrow through there. I was just wondering what the easement's going to be.
When you get through talking, we'll bring that slide back up and speak to that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? I see no one indicating, so I'm going to close the public hearing. So you did have a slide that showed there it is. So could you answer her question?
You bet. So there is an easement off of Blue Bonnet Lane. So it's got to be 25 feet back from that. And there are some existing trees that are adjacent off of there that we are actually leaving those trees. So those trees will remain off of Blue Bonnet, and what is actually bordering or parallel with the road is a masonry wall.
And how high will that wall be?
It's an 8-foot.
8-foot wall? Okay. So it'll block, it'll make kind of an enclosed little area there?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Sadley, I appreciate you bringing up what you did. For those of us that have lived here a long time, newer people here can't appreciate all the work that went into getting the Colleyville Center put together and done. It was a vision that was held for actually many years until it could be done, and many organizations worked on it. And you mentioned the Garden Club. The Garden Club, I think it was in the last meeting, donated $10,000 to this project, which I believe is going to be put into the fountain, if I'm correct. Would you point out where the fountain is here? Well, you can't, people can't see it, but is it that white?
It is.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, it is on the other side of the wall that is directly adjacent to.
Yeah. What?
Wall fountain.
Yeah.
Wall fountain.
What's the? Yeah. Okay. The white rectangle, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
And it is a wall.
Between the two
Okay.
trees, yeah.
Has that already been picked out, or is it yet to be decided what that looks like?
We have picked out a model,
Okay.
but we haven't finalized.
Found it, okay. I will also point out that Garden Club years ago, in the front of the Colleyville Center, a little, what do you call it? Balustrade. They donated money to help pay for that too. So Garden Club has done a lot over the years. Appreciate them.
Yeah, and the Garden Club, as part of their donation, we are doing the landscaping inside of the area.
Yeah.
And I invite you ladies, at the end of September, we're going to be having an open house
Good.
to celebrate the opening of the new
Yeah.
courtyard that will be finished.
Yeah, very good, yeah. August the 16th in the contract.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned that there's a penalty if they don't complete. Is it based on a day or a week?
It is. So their contract includes a number of calendar days that they have to be done
Right.
by, and then it's $1,000 liquidated damage per day.
Per day.
They're not done.
Thank you. Just thought that's important. We've had situations before where the penalties were quite low, and they basically ignored them, so I appreciate that.
Councilmember Dotson, just so you know, whenever these contracts come to me for signature, I make sure that there's a date certain, so that everybody's clear after that date, they're paying the penalty.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've had the public hearing. We're ready for a motion.
Let's see.
4385, 19-4385.
All right, I'll move to approve resolution R-19-4385.
I'll second.
You have a motion to approve by Councilmember Wheat, a second by Councilmember Kelly, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like it.
Okay. So would you open the vote, please?
I got nothing.
Not coming. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
There it is. And you may show it. Motion is approved, therefore the resolution is approved. Very good. Get her done.
They can start to work tomorrow.
That's right. Okay, we'll move to agenda item 8. This is an item not for action, but it's the monthly financial report and quarterly investment report. And Shireen Gindy is going to give that to us. And I want to we'll let everybody know that you are leaving us as of June the 3rd, I believe it is. And we thank you for being here and appreciate all the work you've done for the city. And you're going to Lakeside? I keep getting that wrong.
Lakeway.
Lakeway.
Oh, outside of Austin?
How about Austin, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
Austin.
So this will be your last financial report to us.
Fortunately,
Okay.
well, I would like to thank Mayor and Council for all the support that you have given me and my staff over the past 2 years. It has been a privilege serving such a beautiful community. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So tonight we're going to go over the monthly report for April 2019. We'll start with the general fund. The general fund revenues are currently at 84% of the budget, and this is in line with last year's numbers. The main sources of revenue in the general fund are the property tax, franchise fees, and the 1 cent sales tax. The ad valorem taxes are in line with prior year. It's only 0.2% above prior year. The franchise taxes are at 6.76% over last year, and the 1 cent sales tax is at 1.8% above last year. Expenditures are at 56% of the budget, and April marks the end of 58% of the budget, so we're below this threshold, assuming that all the expenditures are spent in a straight line. This slide shows us activity for the sales tax, because sales tax can be confusing given that we earn them in 1 month and the city does not receive it until 2 months later. So if we look at the first chart, the February sales tax for 2019 is the highest among the past 5 years, which is a good sign. The chart next to it shows the cumulative collections as of today. So this number will not show, like the $1,920,000,000 is not going to show until next month's financial report. So it's in line with last year, with only $9,000 below it. And we're talking $9,000 out of $2 million, so it's really an insignificant amount that we should bounce out of it and go back to exceed prior years. The next fund is a utility fund. The revenues are at 41% of the budget, and the expenditures at 40% of the budget, which shows the purpose of the fund. It should be a wash for the revenues and expenditures. And so this chart reflects that we are on track with what was expected of this fund. The base rate is in line with the budget and in line with historical trend. When we're talking about the volumetric rate, we can see a significant decrease for the water side, basically because of the amount of rain we have been receiving recently is affecting those figures, but it's a pass-through rate, so it's not affecting the city's financials. Any question about the utility fund or the general fund so
Can I
far?
point out something? The point you just made is worth discussing in a little greater detail. The utility numbers you see here reflect why the new rate structure instituted a few years back was so important. You notice that the water and sewer base rate is right on where it should be to cover the costs of the operation of the utility. It's the volumetric rate that is variable and is somewhat unpredictable dependent upon weather, but that volumetric rate has nothing to do with the cost of doing business. That's simply a pass-through rate. And so the city is not in a predicament of having to figure out a way to make up for that lost revenue because of weather conditions. Instead, the city continues to operate as was budgeted and as was planned, and the residents pay exactly what their portion of that cost is.
Definitely.
And so it's an important visual to represent why that was such an important change.
And that's quite remarkable, that volumetric. That means it's about half the use because of the rain. That's amazing.
Yes.
We've had a lot of rain.
We have, and if that trend continued all summer, you could have a situation where the community is falling short hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue because they counted on that use that did not come to fruition.
And actually, in 2000, I think it was 2008, 2007 or 2008, that exact thing happened. Where the revenue fell short and they had to issue bonds, and we just paid them off last year, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it's a dramatic impact.
How much was it, George? Do you recall?
Yeah.
The bonds?
At least 10 million, I
Wow.
think in that range, yeah.
I didn't know that. Huge.
I don't know why every city doesn't do this. It's amazing to me.
A lot of different reasons, but it's a great question, because.
Consultants don't tell them to, that's why.
Yeah.
Exactly, they don't.
We
had to argue with the consultant to implement what we were implementing. They tried to tell us that the variable rate, or not the variable rate, but the tiered rates would help with conservation. Well, that's not true at all, and in fact, we voted against his recommendation. Yeah.
So the next fund we have is a debt service fund, and the revenue side is the only thing that changed since last presentation, because for the expense side, we pay for leases, for the capital leases, and the bond payments, and we're not expecting to see any activity until June when we pay the ambulance lease, and then we'll have activity in August when we start paying the second interest portion of our bonds. And so for the revenues, we already reached our budget goal for this year, and so the fund is healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's real interesting. This typically happens, like we have more revenue than we budgeted in the INS account, which means we have, in fact, that's why we're able to pay our leases out of this account. But I was talking with somebody recently. This typically happens.
Yes.
To most organizations, right?
It has something to do with the way exemptions are calculated and the rate is set.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be an additional amount of revenue that comes from that. You could, I guess, try to project it out of the process, but it's easier than just
very
use that
difficult
funding for our lease of our equipment.
Well, it actually happens because the state requires that when we set the rate, they do not factor in the assets of people like me over 65 and those exemptions, although in reality, we do collect those revenues.
Sure.
It's a state requirement. Just interesting.
It is. All right, so last but not least, we have the drainage fund. I would like to remind everyone that this is only the operating side of the fund, because towards the end of last year, Council approved separating the capital side from the operating side of the drainage fund. So this is just operation, does not include the master plan or any kind of CIP.
Okay.
So for the drainage fee revenues, they are up 1.21%, and we are at 60.7% of the budget, and the expenditures are on track. So that concludes the monthly report. Any question?
Can you go back to sales tax real quick? The year-to-date sales tax numbers? Right there. The previous slide shows that we're on par because it does not include the March receipts, which were collected in May. But you can see the March single month was down dramatically, but takes us to a year-to-date where basically we're at zero growth over last year. The reason why this is important is because last year, the same collection date of March was a high month. And so that could account for a little bit of the comparable. When you're comparing year on year, you're always going to have the potential that last year was a banner month, and then you should see an adjustment this year as you get back to new normal. However, we want to watch this carefully because the month of April was also a good month last year. And so they didn't really level off the months, until we got closer to the end of the fiscal year. And so in theory, next month, if we see a slight negative or a positive, that's good. If we see a high negative, that may create some concern heading into the end of the fiscal year that the last couple of months can't make up that difference, and we'll end up with a break even. Why is that important? We'll meet budget, or we'll be right up or close to budget. The reason that's important is that's a factor we have to consider in next year's projections for sales tax.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we may have to lower expectations for next year if that trend continues. And so the next 2 months are crucial in understanding that. This could just be an anomaly. You saw in the January figures, we had an 8.6% increase, and now we have an 8.6% decrease. So it could just be a reporting problem. But we'll have to wait and see what the next 2 months provide. And so it is a concern. It's something we're watching very carefully.
Yeah. Okay,
Any question?
very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the agenda item 9 is the table. We're going to leave that on the table as I announced earlier. Agenda item 10 is citizen comments. Do we have any cards? Kathy Hadley?
Kathy Hadley, 204 Timberline Drive North, to represent myself. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that earlier. Can't believe it. I've got to let y'all know how much I really appreciate each and every one of you for all the hard work and the time that y'all put into saving and making our city beautiful, keeping our city beautiful, getting her back to being the way she used to be and keeping her there. Thank you so very much. And I also want to thank all of you and Mayor for allowing the taxpayers, residents, get up and speak. We're not limited to what we want to say about the topic, the agenda items. I may be walking on shady ground. I went to a school board meeting last night and I signed up to speak, and hadn't been in years. And I went and he said, okay, it's time for comments. Anybody wants to get up and speak, come over here. You may not speak. And he gave all these don'ts you can't say. I'm like, well, I have nothing to say then. But no, I did. I got up and I spoke. It wasn't ugly at all. But he had us, superintendent had everybody, not everybody, me, very concerned of what I wanted to talk about. And as a taxpayer, I had some very big concerns, but I felt very intimidated not to share them. I can't believe that. But I was intimidated not to share them, so I guess I'll do it next time. But y'all don't do that at all with the taxpayers. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for allowing us to speak. Also, I don't know if this is even possible. Is it something to have a Colleyville ISD? Just leave Grapevine, Colleyville ISD, move, separate. We need some good conservative people running our school board. Our school district, the school board over there is very liberal. It's awful. I'm sorry. So if we could break off and just have our own school district and have it run by a bunch of conservatives, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have for item 10. So we'll move to item 11, which is reports, quarterly performance management report. Want to say anything? Or?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just touch on a couple of items. The report is provided in your packet, and we'll also provide it online. But a couple of items that are worthy of note, our social media followers has increased dramatically year to date this year, even over last year. And I credit Erin Spicer, who's done a fantastic job in increasing our social media presence. She's really worked hard on that, and she's found a way, I think, to communicate our message in a more unique way. Also, our loss ratio related to our medical claims is in line where we want it to be, and that's important because that's part of our renewal for our health insurance, which is a major cost in our budget. And so we should have that renewal rate to us. We've gotten a preliminary rate. We should have a final and best offer next week, and should be back to the council with that discussion coming shortly. A few other things of note that I think residents would find important. Our retail and office occupancy rate continues to sustain levels above 90%. And so that means that our occupancy rates are beating the national average and are doing well. Equally important, our inspection and plan review timelines for commercial property and residential property are close to, but not yet meeting our timeline of 5 and 8 days respectively. Part of that reason has been we have had a very heavy amount of residential permit activity. We are fully staffed, and we're getting up to speed, but we are a couple of days short, and we'll continue to work on that. And then finally, really excited to see police response time continues to not only beat our benchmark, our target, but is really doing well, beating last year. Our police response time has dropped from 2018 at 3 minutes and 36 seconds. In 2019, we're down just around 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's almost a minute cut off of time.
That's great.
As well as the fire department response time. Both are continuing to beat the benchmark and continue to perform. And we're very excited about that because we know that's the two most important services our residents are provided.
Yeah.
That is all, Mr. Mayor.
That's great. And you mentioned our inspection, our housing is pretty strong this year.
It's very strong. Last year, we did about 165 new residential permits in this community, and this year we're on pace to do the same, which is pretty amazing because that is what I would consider a very healthy growth, especially for a community that doesn't have a lot of available lots out there.
Yep.
And so that's going to be an interesting question and concern as we move forward in the future. As demand continues and supply dries up, it's going to present some challenges for this community as developers look to develop more properties or even redevelop the properties we have.
Yeah.
Interesting challenge, financially and from a planning standpoint.
Yeah, and just for the council, me and Jerry meet, of course, every week on Mondays, typically for sure Mondays. And one thing we're talking about today is all these factors and kind of looking out over multi-years from a financial planning perspective. And as things change, what does that do? So I mentioned that because I've heard people say we don't do planning. Well, that's kind of garbage. We do a lot of planning. And we really know where we're going and how we're getting there.
Absolutely.
And that would continue.
Well, and you had two recent subdivisions come forth for zoning approval and PUD approval, and they're both moving toward final plating. But those subdivisions are relatively small as number of lots. And so your inventory will continue to decline.
Right.
And that's a good thing. It provides, I think, more unique opportunities and more quality opportunities for enhancement of existing properties. Because as the availability of buying a vacant lot decreases, people buy existing homes and invest more in them and fix them up, or they may result in some tear downs. And so it's an interesting dynamic that over the next 2 years will change dramatically.
Yeah. Very good. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, all I would say is if we keep our quality up, that's the critical thing.
Absolutely.
If we start to allow higher density, then the whole city's going to change. And I think it's important that we keep the quality that we were elected to produce.
Yeah. Well, one thing about this is as we run out of new space, greenfield space,
to
the
rebuild.
pressure for the redevelopment of the larger lots just gets greater.
Right.
To go higher density. So gotta keep the standards.
Exactly.
Very true.
Very good. We have, if there are no other comments, we do not have a need for agenda item 12, and so that brings us to 13, which is adjournment, which I'm going to do if nobody objects. I see no objections, so we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
What time is it? 9:04.
Not bad.
But I don't know if I find your bird.
Close enough.
I'm jealous.